Maya had been working at the small, crowded cafe in the heart of Paris for many years. Life had never been easy for her. She had grown up in a family that struggled to make ends meet, and from a young age she had learned the value of hard work. Her mother had passed away when Maya was only 12, and her father had worked multiple jobs to support her and her younger brother. Despite the hardships, Maya had always been determined to make a better life for herself. The cafe where she worked was a cozy place with warm lights, small wooden tables, and the rich smell of freshly brewed coffee. It was not a luxurious cafe, but it was comfortable and had regular customers who had come to love Maya's cheerful smile and polite demeanor. She knew most of the names of the regulars, their favorite orders, and even how they liked their coffee just the way they wanted. It was not a grand life, but it was steady, and it gave her a sense of purpose. On that particular afternoon, the sky outside was painted in shades of soft pink and orange, the sun preparing to set behind the tall Parisian buildings. The cafe was filled with its usual bustle, people chatting over pastries, students typing away on laptops, and a few tourists taking a brief rest from their sightseeing. Maya moved gracefully between the tables, carrying trays of coffee and plates, her movements quick but careful. She had learned to handle multiple orders at once, and she did so with a kind smile, making each customer feel welcome. The door of the cafe opened suddenly, and a gust of wind entered with it, carrying with it a hint of the city's late afternoon chill. Maya looked up from the tray she was carrying and noticed a man standing at the entrance. He was sharply dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his shoes polished to a mirror shine. His hair was neatly combed, and his posture radiated confidence, perhaps too much confidence. There was something about him that made people instinctively step back, even if they could not explain why. The man walked toward the counter, and Maya noticed a small security detail following a few steps behind him. She recognized him immediately from the news and social media. He was Alexander Moreau, a billionaire known for his business empire, his sharp mind, and often his sharp tongue. His presence made the cafe feel suddenly smaller, as if the walls themselves were shrinking under the weight of his fame and power. Alexander's eyes scanned the cafe quickly, and then they settled on Maya. He smiled, but it was not a warm or friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that made someone feel like they were being measured, judged, and found wanting all at once. Maya felt a small shiver run down her spine, but she did not let it show. She had learned long ago that her dignity was more important than fear. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to our cafe," she said politely, keeping her voice calm and steady. Alexander looked down at her and smirked. He leaned slightly closer and spoke in Arabic, a language Maya's family had taught her as a child, but one she rarely used in public. His words were sharp, almost mocking. "Otganini? Do you even understand this?" For a moment, Maya froze. She could hear the curiosity and slight discomfort among the nearby patrons. Some were whispering to each other, sensing the tension in the air. Alexander had clearly assumed that Maya would not understand his words, that he could speak freely and mock her without consequence. Maya's mind raced. She remembered the lessons her grandmother had taught her when she was very young. Her grandmother had always said, "Language is power, Maya. It is a bridge between hearts and minds. Never let anyone make you feel small because they cannot see your knowledge." Maya had grown up repeating those words in her head, even when life had been difficult. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Her hands were slightly trembling, but she knew she had a choice. She could let fear or anger control her, or she could respond with dignity. She chose the latter. Alexander raised an eyebrow, clearly expecting silence. He had built his life on intimidation, and it had rarely failed him. But Maya had something he did not: knowledge and courage that had been nurtured in the quiet strength of her childhood. The cafe seemed to hold its breath as Maya straightened her back and met his gaze. There was no hesitation in her eyes, only calm determination. She felt the words forming in her mind, words that would not only answer him but also remind him, and perhaps everyone in the room, that she was worthy of respect. Maya's thoughts wandered briefly to her father. She remembered how hard he had worked to give her a chance at education, how he had stayed up late nights making sure she had books to read and lessons to learn. Her father had always told her that no one could take away her knowledge or her dignity unless she allowed them to. That thought gave her strength. Alexander's smirk widened slightly, convinced that his plan to embarrass her was working. He leaned back and waited, a sense of superiority radiating from him. But Maya did not flinch. She felt the years of struggle, the lessons of her grandmother, and the quiet encouragement of her father all converge into a single, clear resolve. Then with a calm and steady voice, she responded, "Yes, I understand you very well," she said in English first, ensuring everyone could hear her clearly. She paused for a moment, letting the words sink in. Then, almost like a gentle surprise, she continued in fluent Arabic, her tone firm but respectful. وأنا أستحق الاحترام تماما كما تستحقه أنت. And I deserve respect just as much as you do. The cafe fell silent. Patrons who had been whispering now stared in awe. Alexander's smirk faltered. He had expected fear, confusion, or hesitation, not a confident response in a language he had assumed she could not understand. Maya felt a sense of quiet triumph. This was not about proving superiority or winning an argument. It was about standing firm in her dignity, about refusing to let someone else's arrogance define her. She had taken a moment of potential humiliation and turned it into a statement of self-worth. Alexander studied her for a long moment, perhaps realizing for the first time that not everyone could be intimidated by wealth or status. Maya's calm and intelligent response had shifted the balance in a way that he had not anticipated. For Maya, this moment was significant, not because she had bested a billionaire, but because she had shown herself that she could face challenges with courage and grace. The lesson of her grandmother, the support of her father, and her own inner strength had combined to create a moment that she would remember forever. As Alexander finally turned to order a coffee, his eyes no longer held the same sharpness. Maya smiled politely and took his order, but inside she felt a quiet, steady pride. This encounter, brief as it had been, reminded her of the power of knowledge, the importance of dignity, and the strength that could be found in standing up for oneself, no matter the odds. And as the cafe slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Maya knew that this day would be told again and again, not as a story of confrontation, but as a story of courage, respect, and the quiet strength that lives in those who never allow themselves to be underestimated. After the encounter with Alexander Moreau, the cafe slowly returned to its usual rhythm. But something had changed. Maya could feel it in the way some of the patrons looked at her with newfound respect. She had always been polite, helpful, and cheerful, but this time, people sensed a quiet strength emanating from her, something deeper than just her usual friendliness. She carried her tray with drinks to a table in the corner, placing them gently for two elderly women who often came for afternoon tea. "Thank you, Maya," one of them said softly. "You have a very strong heart. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small." Maya smiled, her mind still replaying the words she had spoken to Alexander. They felt like a small victory, but more than that, they felt like a promise to herself, to never hide her strength again. As she moved between tables, she noticed Alexander sitting alone near the window, staring at the street outside. His presence was still imposing, but there was now a trace of uncertainty in his posture. He had come in with confidence, ready to mock and dominate, but Maya had changed the tone of the room in just a few words. It fascinated her, the way one person could shift the energy of an entire space, and yet she also felt cautious. Wealth and power had their own ways of influencing people, and she did not yet know what Alexander's reaction would be outside the cafe walls. After finishing her shift, Maya stepped outside into the cool evening air. The city of Paris was alive with its usual symphony of sounds, distant car horns, laughter from street performers, and the soft footsteps of people walking along cobblestone streets. She took a deep breath, letting the air fill her lungs, and felt a mixture of relief and excitement. Today had been extraordinary, but tomorrow was unknown. As she walked home, her thoughts drifted to her childhood, to the lessons her grandmother had taught her. Her grandmother had been a woman of quiet strength, a storyteller who always believed in the power of knowledge. She had taught Maya Arabic, insisting that it was more than just a language. It was a key to understanding the world and connecting with people. Maya had practiced it in secret for years, never realizing that it might one day serve as both shield and voice in a moment like today. Maya also thought of her father, who had worked tirelessly to give her a chance at education. He had always said, "Life is unfair sometimes, but your courage can make it right." That phrase had become a guiding light for her. Today, she had lived that lesson. She had faced someone who had power over many things, but not over her integrity. The next morning, Maya arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. She had not slept much the night before, thinking about the encounter and the ripple it might create. As she prepared the tables and arranged the pastries, she noticed that a few new faces were already entering the cafe. There was a quiet curiosity in their eyes, as if they had heard about what had happened the day before. Whispers followed her as she moved gracefully around the room, but this time they were filled with admiration, not tension. Alexander arrived shortly after without any of his usual entourage. This time there was no smirk, no attempt at intimidation. He approached the counter cautiously, as if testing the waters. "Good morning," he said, his voice lacking the arrogance it had carried the day before. Maya nodded politely, her expression neutral but confident. She was curious what had brought him back. Was it regret, curiosity, or something else entirely? He ordered a simple coffee, black, and asked her to prepare it carefully. Maya noticed the change in his tone, a hint of respect mixed with uncertainty. As she prepared his coffee, she thought about the power of small gestures. Sometimes a simple act, like making a cup of coffee with care, could say more than words ever could. While making his coffee, she recalled how Alexander had underestimated her. He had assumed she did not understand him, that he could use language as a weapon to belittle her. But Maya had responded with calm confidence. It had been a turning point, not just for him, but for herself. She realized that life often tested people in unexpected ways, and courage was not about loud actions. It was about standing firm in one's truth, no matter how small the stage. As she handed him the coffee, their eyes met briefly. Alexander's gaze lingered for a moment longer than necessary. There was a strange mix of surprise, respect, and perhaps reflection. He did not speak, only nodded slightly and moved to a table by the window. Maya returned to her duties, but she could not shake the feeling that something significant had shifted. Not just in him, but in the world around her. The cafe grew busy again, with students, families, and tourists coming and going. Maya moved efficiently, serving drinks, taking orders, and offering a warm smile to everyone. Yet her mind kept returning to Alexander. She wondered what he was thinking. Had he realized that power and wealth could never replace respect and dignity? Had he learned that a simple word spoken with confidence could change the energy of an entire room? During a quiet moment, Maya stepped outside for a short break. She leaned against the cafe wall, feeling the soft breeze on her face, and allowed herself a moment of reflection. Life had taught her many lessons about hardship, perseverance, and hope. But this encounter had reminded her of something essential. Courage often comes quietly, in the spaces between fear and action. Back inside, the cafe door opened again and a few new customers entered, unaware of the recent events. Maya greeted them with her usual warmth, showing no sign of distraction. Her professionalism and kindness were unwavering, even in the aftermath of an extraordinary encounter. She had learned that dignity was not just about moments of confrontation. It was about carrying oneself with grace in every moment, big or small. As the day progressed, she noticed Alexander watching her occasionally, not with the same arrogance, but with genuine interest. There was a subtle shift in his behavior, a humility that she had not expected from someone so used to control and admiration. It was fascinating to observe how someone so powerful could be affected by a single act of confidence and clarity. By the time the cafe was ready to close, Maya felt a sense of accomplishment. She had navigated the day with poise, turning what could have been a moment of tension into a lesson in self-respect and dignity. She knew that tomorrow could bring new challenges, but she felt ready. The encounter with Alexander had not only tested her courage, it had strengthened it. As she locked the cafe door and walked home, the city lights twinkled around her, reflecting the colors of the sunset that had faded hours before. Maya felt a quiet determination. Life was full of unexpected moments, but she had learned that courage, knowledge, and dignity were tools that could guide her through any challenge. She smiled to herself, thinking of her grandmother's words. Language is power. Courage is strength. Never let anyone make you small. That night, as she prepared for bed, Maya reflected on the day's events. She realized that respect was not something that could be demanded. It was something that had to be earned, and sometimes it came from the quiet courage to stand up for oneself. She thought about Alexander and the subtle change in his demeanor. Perhaps he had learned something too. Perhaps the world was beginning to show him that true power was not in wealth or fame, but in the ability to treat others with respect. Maya drifted off to sleep that night with a sense of peace she had not felt in a long time. The world could be unpredictable and challenging, but she had discovered something profound. That moments of courage, no matter how small, could create ripples far beyond what she could see. And she was ready for whatever tomorrow might bring. The days following the cafe encounter were unusual for Maya. Normally, her life followed a simple rhythm. Wake up, prepare for work, serve customers, and return home. But now everything felt different. The incident with Alexander Moreau seemed to have created a ripple that reached far beyond the small cafe in Paris. At first, it was subtle. A few regulars mentioned it in passing, offering congratulations with shy smiles. "You were very brave, Maya," said Madame Claire, an elderly customer who had always admired Maya's kindness. "Not everyone could do what you did." Maya had nodded politely, brushing off the praise. She didn't think of it as bravery. She thought of it as standing up for herself, something she had always known was right but had rarely needed to prove in public. But soon, the story began to travel further. A young student who had been sitting near the counter during the encounter had posted about it on social media. Within hours, her post gained hundreds of shares, and by the next day it had reached thousands of people. Many were impressed not only by Maya's courage but by her poise and intelligence. Some wrote comments praising her fluency in Arabic, marveling at how she had transformed a moment of potential humiliation into one of quiet dignity. Maya had not sought attention. She had never wanted fame, yet the reaction of the public was overwhelming. Messages of support began arriving on her phone from strangers who had never met her, telling her how inspired they felt by her confidence. At first she was shy about reading them. It felt strange to be the focus of so much attention, but gradually she began to understand something important. Her story could inspire others. Her words and actions could show people that respect was earned through integrity, not wealth or power. Meanwhile, Alexander Moreau's world was also shifting, though in a different way. He was a man accustomed to control and authority, someone who rarely faced anyone who could challenge him calmly. Yet Maya's response had unsettled him more than he expected. In meetings with his colleagues, he found himself thinking about her words. They were simple, clear, and yet powerful. She had spoken with confidence and dignity, reminding him that true respect was not demanded, it was earned. Alexander began reflecting on his own behavior, something he rarely did. For the first time, he wondered whether his sharp tongue and arrogance had cost him more than it had gained. Maya's quiet courage had shown him an alternative. That influence could come not only from power but from respect, humility, and intelligence. He found himself thinking about her unexpectedly, wondering who she was and what had given her such confidence. Back at the cafe, Maya tried to return to normalcy. She continued to serve customers with her usual warmth and professionalism, but now she carried herself with a new sense of purpose. Each smile, each polite word, each careful action was no longer just about doing her job. It was a statement of who she was. She realized that moments of courage were not just one-time events. They shaped the way a person carried themselves in every interaction afterward. One afternoon, a small group of journalists came to the cafe. They had heard of the story and wanted to interview her. Maya felt nervous at first, unsure if she wanted to speak publicly. But when she saw the genuine curiosity and respect in their eyes, she agreed. The interview was simple. She spoke about her life, her work, and the importance of dignity and respect. She never mentioned Alexander in a negative way. She simply told her story, sharing what had guided her to speak confidently in that moment. The article was published online and quickly went viral. People around the world read about the young woman in Paris who had stood her ground with intelligence and grace. Many commented that her story reminded them that confidence and respect could overcome even the most intimidating situations. Maya, who had never imagined herself in the spotlight, began to understand that courage had a ripple effect. It could spread far beyond the original moment. Meanwhile, Alexander was becoming aware of the story's reach. His team informed him that Maya's response had become a trending topic, and even some of his business associates had mentioned it. He felt a mixture of emotions, pride in recognizing her strength, embarrassment for underestimating her, and curiosity about the woman who had so effortlessly changed the energy of a room he thought he controlled. One day, Alexander returned to the cafe, not to mock or challenge, but simply to observe. Maya noticed him immediately, but she did not alter her behavior. She greeted him politely, serving him with the same care and attention as any other customer. He ordered a simple coffee, and as she prepared it, she felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. She had not sought recognition, yet here it was, proof that courage and dignity could resonate far beyond a single moment. As she handed him the coffee, their eyes met. There was no smirk this time, no attempt at intimidation. Instead, there was a subtle acknowledgement, a quiet respect that spoke volumes. Maya realized that respect could be conveyed not only through words but also through actions, gestures, and the way one carried oneself. Alexander's acknowledgement was small, but it was meaningful. The ripple effect extended beyond the cafe. A local charity reached out to Maya, asking her to speak to young students about the importance of confidence, respect, and integrity. She agreed, seeing it as an opportunity to share the lessons she had learned. Standing in front of a classroom of curious faces, Maya spoke with clarity and warmth. She told them about her childhood, her struggles, and the importance of knowledge and courage. She shared the story of her encounter, emphasizing how standing up for oneself with dignity could leave a lasting impression. The students listened intently, inspired by her words. Some approached her afterward, sharing their own experiences and asking for advice. Maya realized that her courage had created a chain reaction. Her story had empowered others to believe in themselves. It was a reminder that even a single moment of confidence could spark change in ways she could never have imagined. Meanwhile, Alexander found himself reflecting more deeply. He began to question the ways he had conducted his life, the assumptions he had made about people based on their status, and the importance of humility. Maya's response had shown him that power alone was not enough. Respect, empathy, and understanding were equally important. He started considering how he could adjust his approach, both in business and in life, to recognize the value of others beyond appearances. As weeks passed, the cafe became a small landmark for those who had heard Maya's story. People came not just for coffee, but to witness the young woman who had spoken with courage and dignity. Maya remained humble, continuing her work with care and warmth, but she no longer felt invisible. She understood now that respect was not something to wait for. It was something to claim through actions, knowledge, and confidence. One evening, as the sun set over the Paris skyline, Maya reflected on the ripple effect that had begun with a single moment. What had started as an encounter with a wealthy, powerful man had grown into a story of courage, dignity, and inspiration. She realized that life had a way of presenting challenges, and each challenge carried an opportunity to show who you truly were, to influence others positively, and to leave a lasting impact. That night, Maya went home feeling a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. The world outside might be unpredictable, filled with people who underestimated or judged others, but she had discovered that true strength lay in knowledge, courage, and dignity. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she felt ready. She had learned that one person's confidence could create waves, touching lives in ways no one could predict. As she drifted off to sleep, Maya thought of the young students she had spoken to, the patrons who admired her, and even Alexander Moreau, whose presence had sparked the entire chain of events. She realized that courage and respect were contagious, that small acts could grow into something much larger, and that each person had the power to influence the world quietly but profoundly. Maya smiled, feeling the warmth of a lesson well learned, the courage to stand firm in your beliefs, the knowledge to speak wisely, and the grace to act with dignity. These were the forces that could ripple through the lives of many, long after the moment had passed. And she was ready to continue making ripples. The weeks that followed the cafe incident became a period of quiet transformation, not just for Maya, but for everyone whose lives had touched hers in that brief moment of courage. Maya had returned to her routine at the cafe, but now every action carried a new weight, a subtle strength she had never fully realized before. The morning sunlight streaming through the large windows seemed warmer, brighter, and even the ordinary clatter of cups and plates sounded somehow fuller, alive with possibility. Maya's days were still busy, but the energy she carried had changed. Customers noticed it immediately. There was a light in her eyes, a calm assurance in her smile, and a steady confidence in the way she moved. She greeted every patron politely, but with a subtle authority that commanded respect without ever demanding it. Even people who had never met her before felt a sense of admiration, as though they had glimpsed someone who understood life's quiet power. Alexander Moreau, meanwhile, had become an unexpected presence in her thoughts. It was strange even to himself how much he had reflected on their encounter. For a man accustomed to control and wealth, being quietly challenged had been unfamiliar, almost disconcerting. He could not forget the calm certainty in Maya's eyes or the effortless way she had spoken Arabic to respond to him. Her words had been simple yet powerful, words that had dismantled the arrogance he often wielded like a shield. He had returned to the cafe several times since that day, not to test her nor to mock but merely to observe. Each time he noticed small changes, how she treated the customers, how she carried herself, how her presence seemed to lift the energy in the room. It fascinated him. He had traveled the world, met people of influence and wealth, but Maya had given him something entirely new, the reminder that respect and dignity could not be bought or commanded. They had to be recognized and earned. One afternoon, Maya finished her shift later than usual. The cafe was nearly empty, and the air carried a gentle calm. She was wiping down tables when she noticed Alexander standing near the entrance, waiting quietly. She felt a flicker of surprise but maintained her composure. He walked over slowly, his expression unreadable, and approached the counter. "Good afternoon, Maya," he said, his voice softer than usual, lacking its usual sharpness. "May I speak with you for a moment?" Maya nodded politely, setting down the rag she had been using. "Of course," she replied. Her heart beat slightly faster, not out of fear but anticipation. She had wondered if this conversation would come, but she had not known what it might be about. Alexander took a seat at a small table near the window. He looked around briefly, then back at Maya, as though gathering the right words. "I have been thinking about what happened here," he began, his tone unusually humble. "About the words you spoke and the way you handled yourself. I wanted to understand. How did you find the courage to respond so calmly?" Maya considered his question carefully. She could have given a simple answer, but instead she chose honesty. "I think it comes from knowing who you are," she said softly. "From understanding that your worth does not depend on what others think of you. My grandmother taught me Arabic, and she also taught me to value knowledge and dignity. My father taught me to face challenges without fear. When someone tries to belittle you, it is a choice. You can accept it or you can stand firm. I chose to stand firm." Alexander listened intently, absorbing each word. There was a pause, then he nodded slowly. "I underestimated you," he admitted. "I assumed my wealth, my reputation, would make my words carry weight. But I see now that power alone does not earn respect. You reminded me of something important." Maya felt a quiet satisfaction. She had not spoken to him to teach a lesson, but to assert her own dignity. Yet she also realized that Alexander was genuinely reflecting on his behavior. Perhaps her actions had sparked a change, not only in the people who had witnessed the encounter, but even in someone who had once seemed untouchable. Over the next few weeks, their interactions became more frequent, though always respectful and professional. Alexander began to show a quieter, more thoughtful side. He asked Maya questions not to challenge her, but to understand her perspective. She spoke about her life, her studies, and her aspirations. Alexander listened, sometimes offering advice, sometimes merely absorbing her words in thoughtful silence. Meanwhile, the story of Maya's courage continued to spread. The social media post that had started it all had reached more people than she could have imagined. She received letters and messages from students, young professionals, and even older adults, all inspired by her calm strength. Some shared their own experiences, moments when they had faced intimidation or mockery, and how her story had given them the courage to stand up for themselves. One morning, Maya received a letter from a local university. They were offering her a scholarship to study linguistics and international relations, fields she had always dreamed about, but had never imagined pursuing fully. The letter explained that her courage, intelligence, and dedication had impressed the scholarship committee, and they wanted to support her future endeavors. Maya felt a surge of emotion as she read the letter. It was a recognition not only of her abilities, but also of the choices she had made, the courage she had shown, and the dignity she had maintained. She thought of her grandmother and her father, both of whom had instilled in her a belief in the value of knowledge, respect, and integrity. Tears came to her eyes, not of sadness but of gratitude and hope. That evening she shared the news with Alexander. They met at the cafe once more after closing hours, sitting at a quiet table near the window. She showed him the letter and he smiled genuinely. "You deserve this," he said simply. "Not because of me, not because of anyone else, but because of who you are. You earned this." Maya realized something important in that moment. Life had a way of presenting challenges, testing courage, and offering opportunities for growth. Her encounter with Alexander had been just the beginning. It had taught her about the power of knowledge, the importance of dignity, and the impact of standing firm in one's beliefs. Now that lesson was coming full circle in the form of new opportunities and recognition. As the sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, Maya reflected on the ripple effect her actions had created. A single moment of courage had led to changes in the lives of strangers, inspired young students, prompted reflection in a powerful man, and opened doors for her future. She realized that courage was not just about facing fear, it was about the impact that one person could have on the world, even in subtle ways. Alexander remained quiet for a moment, watching her with a newfound respect. "You have taught me more than you realize," he said finally, "about humility, about strength, and about the quiet power of dignity. I will not forget this." Maya smiled, understanding that respect and influence were not one-way streets. Just as she had learned from her grandmother and father, Alexander was learning from her, an unexpected exchange that enriched them both. It was a reminder that growth could happen at any time, and that sometimes the smallest moments could carry the greatest lessons. The next days continued to bring small but meaningful changes. Maya began preparing for her university studies while continuing to work at the cafe. She mentored students, shared her story with those who sought guidance, and carried herself with a confidence that inspired those around her. Alexander, too, began adjusting his approach to leadership, becoming more mindful of the people around him and the way his words and actions affected others. Together, though in different ways, they were part of a larger story about respect, courage, and the quiet strength that emerges when one chooses integrity over fear. Maya had learned that dignity was not given. It was claimed, nurtured, and shared. Alexander had discovered that true influence required more than wealth or authority. It required empathy, humility, and respect. And as Maya walked home one evening, the Parisian streets glowing with soft lamplight, she felt a deep sense of peace. The ripple effect of her courage had grown far beyond what she could see. She had faced a moment of challenge, spoken with confidence, and in doing so, had set in motion a wave of inspiration, reflection, and opportunity that would continue to grow. Maya realized that the world could be unpredictable, filled with challenges and people who underestimated others. But she had discovered a powerful truth. Knowledge, courage, and dignity could create change, touch lives, and open doors that no one could foresee. And she was ready to continue walking that path, confident that each step forward would carry the lessons she had learned, the strength she had found, and the quiet power that comes from standing firm in one's truth. The morning sun bathed Paris in a golden glow as Maya walked toward the cafe, carrying a small notebook in her hand. Life had changed for her in ways she had never imagined. The encounter with Alexander Moreau, which had once seemed so intimidating, had become the turning point of her life. It had set in motion a series of events that had opened doors, inspired others, and strengthened her belief in the power of courage and dignity. Maya's first stop was the cafe, her second home. Though her days were now filled with studies, mentoring students, and public speaking, she returned regularly to serve customers not out of obligation, but because she loved the sense of connection it gave her. The cafe was quiet in the morning, the aroma of fresh bread and coffee filling the air. She greeted the staff warmly and began preparing for the day, her movements confident and calm. As she set out pastries on the counter, she noticed Alexander entering the cafe. This time he was alone, carrying a simple leather briefcase. He smiled when he saw her, a genuine, unguarded smile that seemed almost unfamiliar. Maya nodded politely, returning the smile. Though their encounters had begun with tension, they had evolved into a mutual respect, a quiet understanding of each other's strength. "Good morning, Maya," Alexander said as he approached the counter. "I hope I am not disturbing your morning." "You're welcome here any time," Maya replied softly. "Coffee?" "Please," he said, settling into a chair near the window. He observed the cafe with interest, but his eyes often returned to Maya, watching her move with grace and ease. As Maya prepared his coffee, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. Just a few months ago, she had been an ordinary waitress, uncertain of her future, quietly dreaming of a life beyond the cafe. But the courage she had shown in that brief encounter had started a ripple effect. The story of her calm strength had traveled across social media, inspiring students, strangers, and even powerful individuals like Alexander. Opportunities had opened to her, including a scholarship to study linguistics and international relations, a dream she had never dared fully to pursue. Handing Alexander his coffee, she added a small plate of freshly baked croissants, as she always did for regular customers. Their eyes met briefly, and in that moment, a silent acknowledgement passed between them. Respect, understanding, and the recognition of a shared lesson about dignity and courage. "Have you thought about your next steps?" Alexander asked after a pause, his voice unusually gentle. Maya nodded. "Yes, the scholarship has been a blessing. I want to continue learning, travel, and share my knowledge with others. I want to help students like the ones who wrote to me, to show them that courage and dignity matter more than fear or intimidation." Alexander smiled, leaning back in his chair. "I am impressed. You have taken a small moment and transformed it into something meaningful for yourself and others. Not many people could do that." Maya felt a quiet pride. It was not just about recognition. It was about understanding the power of one's actions. "It was not easy," she admitted. "At first I doubted myself. But then I remembered the lessons my grandmother and father taught me. They believed in knowledge, courage, and respect. I realized that standing up for yourself is not just about one moment. It shapes the way you carry yourself in life." Alexander nodded thoughtfully. "I've learned something too," he said slowly. "I've realized that wealth and power cannot replace respect, and that humility and understanding are far more powerful than I ever imagined." "You reminded me of that, Maya." The cafe began to fill with morning customers, and Maya shifted her focus to serving them. Yet she felt a sense of calm and fulfillment she had never known before. The small gestures, the polite conversations, and even the daily grind of work all seemed infused with new meaning. Every action, she realized, was part of a larger story, a story of courage, dignity, and influence that extended far beyond the cafe walls. That afternoon, Maya visited the university that had offered her the scholarship. She walked through the halls with her notebook in hand, absorbing the vibrant energy of students and professors alike. She met with the scholarship committee, who welcomed her warmly and encouraged her to explore her full potential. Their words were not just praise, they were an acknowledgement of her journey, her determination, and her resilience. She began her studies with excitement and curiosity. Every lesson, every discussion, and every new concept felt like a step toward the person she had always wanted to become. Maya realized that education was not just about gaining knowledge. It was about expanding her ability to influence the world positively, to connect with others, and to continue the ripple effect of courage and respect that had started with a single moment in the cafe. In the evenings, Maya often returned to the cafe. It had become a place of reflection, a bridge between her past and her future. She continued to serve customers, mentor young students, and share her story when asked. And sometimes Alexander would join her, not as a man of power trying to impress, but as someone genuinely curious, willing to learn, and respectful of her journey. Their conversations grew richer, discussing culture, language, and the meaning of influence. One day, a group of high school students visited the cafe. They had heard Maya's story through social media and the news and wanted to meet the young woman who had shown such remarkable courage. Maya welcomed them warmly, listening to their questions and sharing her experiences with patience and kindness. She encouraged them to embrace their own knowledge, speak with confidence, and face challenges with dignity. The students left inspired, carrying her words in their hearts like seeds that would grow over time. Meanwhile, Alexander had begun incorporating the lessons he had learned into his business and personal life. He treated employees with greater respect, listened more carefully to colleagues, and even began supporting initiatives that promoted education and empowerment. Maya's quiet courage had shown him a perspective he had never considered, and he carried that lesson forward, mindful of the influence one person's integrity could have on another. Months passed, and Maya's life continued to evolve. She excelled in her studies, traveled to conferences, and shared her story widely. She never sought fame, but recognition found her because her actions were genuine, thoughtful, and inspiring. Each new experience reinforced her belief that courage, knowledge, and dignity were forces more powerful than fear, mockery, or even wealth. One evening, after finishing her shift at the cafe, Maya walked home through the softly lit streets of Paris. She paused for a moment on a quiet bridge overlooking the Seine River. The water reflected the lights of the city, shimmering like 1,000 tiny stars. She thought about her journey, the struggles, the lessons, and the moments of quiet courage that had shaped her path. She realized that life was not measured by wealth or status, but by the integrity of one's choices and the impact those choices had on others. As she continued home, Maya received a message from Alexander. It was simple yet meaningful. "Thank you for reminding me what truly matters. You have changed more than your own life." Maya smiled as she read the message. She understood that the ripple effect of courage could extend far beyond what anyone could see. One moment, one choice, one act of dignity. These could create waves that touched lives in ways impossible to predict. And she had witnessed it firsthand. The next morning, she returned to the cafe with a renewed sense of purpose. The city was alive with possibility, and so was she. Every customer she greeted, every student she mentored, and every conversation she had became part of a larger story, a story of hope, courage, and the quiet, unstoppable power of integrity. As she served coffee to a group of young professionals, she thought about how far she had come. From a young waitress uncertain of her future, to a woman inspiring others, she had discovered that life's true power lay not in wealth or fame, but in knowledge, respect, and courage. Alexander arrived once again, quietly taking a seat at his usual table. He nodded at her with a small smile, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they had shared, however indirectly. Maya returned the nod, understanding that respect and influence were not about dominance, but about mutual understanding and the ripple effects of integrity. That evening, Maya closed the cafe and walked home, reflecting on the journey that had begun with a single moment of courage. She realized that life would continue to present challenges, but she was ready. She had discovered a profound truth, that knowledge, courage, and dignity were forces capable of changing not only one life, but countless others. Maya knew that the story was not over. The ripple effect of her courage would continue to grow, touching hearts, inspiring actions, and reminding people everywhere that even in the smallest moments, one person could make a difference. And with that knowledge, she stepped forward into her future, confident, strong, and ready for whatever came next. The city of Paris glittered around her, but more importantly, the light within Maya shone brighter than ever. Her journey had begun with courage, was strengthened by integrity, and now it would continue to inspire, one ripple at a time.